Hello, everyone. Welcome to the interview series of our online legal platform, LawSpot. So today I'm in conversation with a very renowned young generation lawyer, I would say, who hails from Delhi itself and is currently practicing in Delhi. He's a pretty famous face in the Delhi NCR region. We welcome Mr. Jayant Bhatt, who is with us today for this session. So over to you if you would like to address our viewers.
Sure. Thank you, Ayush, and thank you, LawSpot, for having me. I congratulate you on your venture. And first of all, let me, wish you and your team all the success that you deserve right now and also in the future to come, because I know that a tremendous amount of hard work and labor is required, to achieve any amount of success. And, with the youth, I think it's all the more important that we remain focused. And thank you for the wonderful introduction. As a young lawyer, I think I still have a very, very, long way and the journey to still cover. But before we come on further, let me also take this opportunity to thank everybody, at the bar and then the bench, and my colleagues and my family and friends who have always been there by my side. And without, I don't think, whose well wishes and without whose support, I would have reached where I am today.
Great, sir. So let's start then. I would like to begin this discussion with a small incident that took place with me a couple of years back, I suppose. So there was this friend of mine who sent me a joke on WhatsApp. It was an image on which it was written that Zindagi chune BA LLB nahi. So it's a pretty famous joke that runs on social medias and media platforms and everywhere. So we often come across situations where we are asked that why did you do law? Was there nothing better to do? And in fact, to be very honest, when I told my family that I want to pursue law, the first thing that my father said was, you are a science student. Why do you want to go to law? Do engineering. There are better options. Why do you want to pursue law? So this mentality, this stereotype that we go through, like throughout our careers and our, ventures. So have you also come across any such incident where you were stopped and you were asked that why did you choose law, and how did you overcome that? Was law always your first choice, or did it happen by chance? We would like to know about your beginning.
I think a lot many questions, but just to complement what you just said in a WhatsApp message, the one that I read is कि एक इंसान को वकील बनने में 3 साल लग जाते हैं और उसके बाद उसको इंसान बनाने में पूरी जिंदगी लग जाती है. So that's the message I read. That was very true at the time when we had 3-year law courses up to 5 साल के भी हैं. But at the same time, I think it was in class 10th where my family realized, or I think rather in class 11th, when my family realized that, this boy might not be the right person to pursue science as a career. और अगर ये scientist बनेगा तो ये फुल तोड़ देगा, या गिरा देगा, या rocket नहीं launch कर पाएगा. So I think that was the main inspiration which my family had for me. And when they told me कि बेटा अब ये law भी होता है 5 साल का, कर दो. So my mama showed me a prospectus of National School, and he said, why don't you have a look at it? आजकल बहुत तरीके की वकालत होती है, to have a look and see how it is. And I think that was a turning point in my life where I read the prospectus, and it opened a lot of vistas in my mind. I thought, okay, there are so many things that you can achieve as a lawyer, and there are so many things that you can do. That ventured me, and my family always, had my back, saying, okay, if you want to pursue law, do it properly. It's a noble profession, and it requires a lot of, hard work and perseverance and other things, to cope up with the challenges that you have. But however, when I decided to pursue criminal law, as a career, mainly, having a chunk of my practice on the criminal side. So my late Nani was, then alive and kicking. So I went up to her and I told her, that I've joined my senior in Tisari Court, and he does, primarily criminal law work. And that was the time, that she was, as it is, upset with me having becoming a lawyer. And she said, now I disown you, that you're doing criminal law. So, may her soul rest in peace. But I think she was really taken aback when I took a decision of pursuing criminal law as a career after, I think 4 or 5 years into practice already.
Okay, sir. Okay. So thankfully you did law, and we have a wonderful lawyer like you with us today.
Yeah.
So there's this another incident that I want to discuss with you. Again, it was a conversation with one of my friends. So
Right.
she very jokingly one day said that, Ayush, tell me one thing. You lawyers live off the miseries of other people. So how do you feel
Hmm.
about it? So
No, look, I think whenever a person comes to lawyer, they're already miserable. I mean, we don't live on their miseries and we don't create their miseries. I think that's a huge misconception.
I agree.
I think what we need to realize is we are only a helping hand. When
Mm,
a person goes to a doctor or to a lawyer, they
mm.
only want a help, and we are doing our our best to help them.
So okay, and I recently, I mean, I have been to into your LinkedIn connections for quite a long time now, and I've seen that you have been pretty proactive and student-friendly kind of
Right,
a lawyer always.
right.
So I also happened to research about your educational background, and I was really astonished to see that. So I mean, you have completed
ज़्यादा
your
पढ़ाई
law,
हो गई.
huh?
ज़्यादा पढ़ाई हो गई law के बाद.
Exactly.
Masters भी
That's
कर लिए तो.
that's what I'm coming to, sir.
जी.
I saw that you did your undergraduate LLB from Amity Law School, Delhi. Then you went on to pursue your masters from National University of Singapore. Then you did not stop there, and then you again went on to pursue one more master's degree in law from School of Law, New York University. I
So
mean,
just to
both.
put things in perspective, my plan was always to do two masters, but I could achieve it in 1 year
Okay.
because I ended up doing this program called NYU at NUS, which was just a 1 year program, in fact,
Okay.
and the first of its kind in the world. So
Oh,
if you see my profile, it says I've done both my masters from 2007 to 2008,
okay.
and that
Okay.
and that program only lasted for 5 years in the world because the collaboration was lacking funding later, and
Hmm.
then I think the universities had to part ways and then stick to their regular master's program,
Okay.
both NUS and NYU. And I
Okay.
was the first batch of this program, so I think I was one of the few manufactured products in the world now that remains of this
Mm,
program.
That's a very, I mean, special thing to know. I mean, I haven't heard about anything like that, and it's a really great thing. I hope more universities come up with such programs where people can do two things simultaneously,
Yeah,
have both
yeah.
best of both worlds, should I say. So, and sorry, students usually plan on joining a law firm or a lawyer's chamber once they step out of college. Higher education is something that people plan, but they think that चलो यार पहले थोड़ा सा work ex ले लेते हैं, let's do some work, let's get into the legal industry first, let's work for a couple of years and then probably go for masters abroad or somewhere,
Right,
some good university or something like that. So
right.
I mean, did it never occur to you that your friends might have taken jobs after they graduated? So did it
Yeah.
ever occur to you that you should also practice law first and then probably go for your master's or higher education or something like that?
I think that idea played in my mind, but at the same time, I think I was very clear to finish my education at one go. There are both pluses and minuses. When you are a person who has not practiced in the strictest of sense, and when you go for a master's, you are definitely lacking an experience. And which I also realized during my master's course because I had a wonderful batch of about 44 people, where you had people ranging. I being the youngest of, I was I think 22 or 23 back then,
Mm.
and the eldest person in my class was about 44-year-old lady from was Canadian Singaporean in-house lawyer, and the range of questions that they would ask in a classroom would not crop in my head back then. And that made me realize that people coming from different walk of life, having worked either for 3 years, 7 years, 10 or 20 years, had a very different bent of mind and had a very peculiar approach of pursuing a master's. Also, there were a lot of people who had already done one master's before and then were doing these two masters. So some people
Oh,
by the end of this program had three masters.
so trust me, sir, if my father gets to know about
That
these
was
things,
in
that
itself.
people like them exist, he will definitely disown me.
A lot of
For
people
sure.
do. In fact, there was a batchmate of mine, this wonderful lady who is a lawyer in Finland. She was doing a PhD, took a sabbatical for this master's, and was also working for a law firm.
Oh,
So to my mind, she's a superwoman of a kind, and
exactly.
I did not know, how she, streamlined so many challenges and tasks that she has at hand. She was doing two masters, also pursuing PhD, also working for a law firm. So that was phenomenal. And By the way, she also found a life partner within our batch, another lawyer who had come all the way from, Argentina. Yeah.
So let's discuss something about your professional career, sir, because I saw your profile. So after you completed your masters, you joined a firm in Dubai, and you
Yes.
worked there for 2.5 years in the
Right.
corporate sector, I presume. So
I was in the dispute resolution team, so I
okay,
was doing mainly disputes with them also. So
okay,
there's a bit of disputes and bits of aviation, both. Yeah.
okay, okay. So after that, I mean, what was the triggering point when you realized that now is the time that I should go back to my country and probably start from scratch and learn litigation over there and then start my own independent practice in due course? And I mean, what was that moment when you thought, ki, chalo Delhi?
So it was
What
so
was
it
that?
was not in Dubai when the idea had occurred to me. I always, wanted to have my own practice. But going to Dubai, was also a matter of luck, because the market was, pretty, almost very dormant and in recession, even 2008, when I got a break in the law firm. And I think in 2008, towards the end December, there was already a subprime, crisis which had happened in America and then took over the world. The idea, to get an opportunity to work with a law firm was good. One, because I had education loan on my head which I had to repay. And my father had made it very clear that he would only fund part of my education to give me a learning lesson that, look, you must know how to value money. So to make money, to save that money, and then to repay, half the amount of loan that he had funded for me, I was under a bounden duty to realize the worth of money making. So
Okay.
that was, I think, one task. The second task was, it was a great period to be in a law firm, because when you start your career, a law firm gives you a very wide variety of learning experiences and curve. Because I was in the disputes team and it was a foremost firm doing shipping and aviation and insurance work the world over. So I
Mhm.
got a tremendous exposure in those lines, and I had also had the privilege of working with a lot of senior people in my firm. And I think once I've gained that experience, I somewhere in my back of my mind always knew that I have to come back and start my practice as soon as possible. And before I start my practice, I have to be somebody's junior. So I think the later, I think 2 years, 2.5 years time is not a very huge time, because you're still a junior in the profession, and you have had, a good grooming with the law firm. So I think once you already know that you have to have your own practice, or you want to build on your own, so there is a very little confusion in your head, when to jump the ship. So Dubai was never a part of my plan as such. It happened. It was a welcome break, and I think it was a tremendous experience. We must also realize that Dubai is a civil law country, unlike India and
Yes.
UK,
Mhm.
which are common law countries.
Mhm.
And I was fortunate enough to be given associate position when I started, rather than a training contract, which most of your UK lawyers undergo. So
Mhm.
I think that was a welcome break. They could see some potential in me as a young lawyer, and I think I with that experience, which was extremely enriching, at the starting phase of my career, even helps me today when I have to give an opinion for a law firm or against a law firm.
So that was going to be my next question, that you worked in Dubai and now you are following your own passion and practicing in India. So what are the key
Right.
differences that you have seen in the work ethics? I should say work ethics of both the countries. What are the differences, except for the fact that you had to work there on Sundays as well? Because I think
Right.
Sundays are working
Because
there.
Sunday is the beginning of the week for them. Friday and Saturday are the weekends, and
Yes,
Sunday, is when the week commences.
yes.
So I think the major difference is the speed in which they work. In UAE, at least, the time scheduled for a case to be decided from the lowest court to the highest court is 3 years.
Mhm.
But in our country, it's about 20, 30 years average for a
Yeah,
civil matter
there's
at least
no
to be
time limit.
decided. Criminal matters,
Mhm.
there is no time limit.
There's no time
I
limit.
think that is one thing that we can learn from them, absolutely, because these are the good parts. Also, I think working with a British law firm made me realize the importance of work ethics and values, because
Mhm.
they are really good with their work-life balance. They're
Okay.
really honest, dead honest when it comes to their work. Their approach is, if you help the client, and
Mhm.
if you help the client in winding up a matter soon, then not only will you spread your goodwill, the client will also have a repeat value in your life.
Okay.
So I think that is one thing that I learned very early in my career, and even today I imbibe those values. I tell all my colleagues who are in my office that look, we don't have to drag a matter for long. We have to try to wind this matter up as soon as possible, because as it is, the person who has come to you is troubled. But why trouble them further? So the idea is, to wind up a matter quickly, and I hope, someday India also comes up with a mechanism where we have a time-bound decision of the case.
Yeah, we are moving towards that. I mean, in NCLTs and then arbitrations, we have these time-bound mechanisms now. But in the courts, there is no time limit as such that we have come up with.
Yeah.
So now moving on to your current role, sir, you have majority of cases that you deal with are criminal litigations, and then the rest of them are the commercial litigations and other disputes that are there. So in these years of your practice in India, you might have come across several cases where you might have felt that, I mean, the cases which made you proud of being a criminal lawyer in this country. So can you discuss any such incident that happened which made you proud of yourself as a criminal lawyer?
I think lot many, Ayush. I'll be very frank. I think when you're a criminal lawyer, people don't realize, but you're actually fighting for human rights.
Exactly.
And by human rights, I mean, the basic tenets of liberty which have been enshrined in our constitution. And, when you're arguing for a bail, when you're arguing for somebody's discharge, when you're arguing for somebody's acquittal, when you're conducting a cross-examination, there is so much of a moral burden on you, and not just legal burden, that you're discharging anyway. But, you are not giving any false promises to people. And by people, I mean client who come to you. You have to be true, not just to your practice, but also to the people who come to you, because you're comforting them as their lawyer. You are telling them, look, don't worry, we are doing our best. Have faith in the court system. But coming back to your question, there have been lots of instances, where I thought, that I have been particularly proud of being the system. I'll give you a very basic example of a case which I did when I was a junior lawyer in Tisari. My senior at that point in time had this client from Delhi 6, which comes under the jurisdiction of Tisari court, and the husband was already lodged in Tihar jail. The wife, I think about 2 weeks ago, was arrested in some other matter, and a FIR was lodged against her. So I think she was produced by 4:30 in the court, and by 4:30, courts wind up, and then is the time when a duty magistrate sits or the magistrate is about to leave the court. But there was this very young magistrate who was sitting, and before whom I regularly used to appear. Must be my age even now. And I appeared before them when the lady was produced by the police station in the police jeep, and she was brought to the magistrate's court. And I submitted my argument. I told him that Janab, her husband has already been, put in Tihar. If she also goes to jail, she has a 2-year-old child. Who will take care of that child? It was a girl child, a minor that she was carrying.
Yes.
So there is something called a PC and RC, a police custody and a judicial custody, what we call a police remand or a judicial remand. So police remand is when somebody is lodged in police station, and a judicial remand is when you are sent to the concerned jail authority. And I just made a handwritten bail application while she was being produced directly from the police station, and I said, look, her husband is already behind the bars, and if she also goes, and she's with the kid right now, with a 2-year-old daughter, who will take care of the daughter? There is nobody. There are no grandparents. She lives by herself, in Delhi 6. And the magistrate, was so fair. He said, yes, I remember. I've sent the husband behind bars just 2 weeks ago. And, impromptu, then and there at 4:30 in the evening, he gave me a bail order. And I think that made me so proud. I was a young lawyer, I was learning. And the faith that increases tremendously, in the judiciary, was this. Another example I'll give you of Tisari court, as a practicing trial lawyer, so as to say, that there was this, again, a lady magistrate at that point in time, and my client had gotten a bail from her in the morning, but I think in the afternoon she had to leave for some video conferencing or some other commitment, and it was almost 5 in the evening, and she came back. She apologized that she was stuck. She made her staff wait and wrote an order, finalized that order, of release of that person the same day from Tihar jail. So the dark went at about 5:30 from Tisari court to Tihar, and at 8 o'clock my client came out. So, these are the small instances when you realize that, as a criminal lawyer, when you're fighting for the basic rights and liberty of people, it makes you proud. It makes your, it reaffirms your faith, in the whole system. So I think the system is very kind. There are very good judges who are, in the system, and there are so many of them who step up for the cause of justice, when the need arises. Really, really proud.
That's pretty amazing to hear, sir. So, recently, this Nirbhaya gang rape convicts were hanged, and the entire
Right.
country started celebrating. However, I
Hmm.
mean, as we are aware that death penalty has been abolished by many of the countries across the globe. So, because they feel that it's a barbaric form of punishment and it does not
Right.
serve as the purpose of deterrent measure for which it was
Hmm.
introduced. So,
Right.
what is your take on that? I mean, do you feel that India should also follow those countries, or should we continue to have death penalty? Because I know that this can't be a black and white answer. It's a little gray area
Right.
that we are still exploring in.
I think Ayush, I do bow down to the wisdom of the courts, but many a times when we do uphold death penalty, we say it has to be in the rarest of rare cases. And Nirbhaya did shake the conscience of the nation.
True.
And to some extent, I do agree, personally also by what the honorable courts throughout trial court to Supreme Court have decided in upholding, that conviction concurrently and upholding the death penalty. Look, not only did a young girl lose her life, but the barbarism and the ruthlessness which happened in that bus, and how she was how she was assaulted, I think did shake the conscience of the nation by and large. And I think all the evidence that would have been put before the honorable courts during the time of trial, I think would have made the judiciary take the decision to give them death penalty. And it's not the first time that it has been given in the country.
Mhm.
Does it act as a deterrent? I think it does. Should we have more of them? I think only time will decide. As cases keep coming to court, as the challenges keep cropping up. So I think it is only then that we can have eventually have a debate: should we do away with it, or should we not do away with those death penalty? And if we do away with the death penalty, then what should be the alternate mechanism which should act as a deterrent?
Great. Great. So let's talk about your career choices when you came back to India. I mean,
Right,
you joined Mr. Amit Sibbal's chamber initially, then you worked there for
right.
quite a long time, then you switched a couple of chambers before starting your own independent practice. So,
Right.
in your opinion, sir, uh, what should be the time duration during which a person, after stepping out from college, should learn the intricacies of law by working under a senior advocate or a seasoned lawyer for that matter? I mean, is there a specific time duration, or because I ask this question because there is no end
I
to
think,
learn.
yeah,
There is no end to
right.
learning because
Hmm.
every day a new case is going to come up, then new facts, new laws, and different
Hmm.
kinds of things are applied to it.
Right.
So there
Hmm.
is no end to it. So how does a person know that this is the time that I should step out and I should start my own independent practice? And what was
I
your
think there are I think there are a lot of factors. In my case, it was a reverse cycle. Having a plush law firm job, then going to a senior's chamber, then joining an AOR, and then eventually ending up in a trial court practice. My cycle has been completely reversed. Because the idea is, as a first generation lawyer, you cannot skip, learning, and you cannot afford not to know things. That is very important. So I would say anybody who's starting out practice, at least I think for the first 2 to 4 years, please be with someone. It's your personal choice. If you think a particular office is catering to your needs, then stick to that office. If you think you need to change different offices, do that by all means. There is no harm in making selfish choices. All of us are selfish. At the end of the day, we have to think our best interest, what is best for us. But at the same time, whatever you learn, that learning has to go in serving the society. So if you think one office does not serve that need, then you must work in two offices, work in four offices, work in 10 offices. But don't be so infrequent. If you are in one office, stay put for some time and learn what that office has to offer. I think at least 3, 4 basic grounding work in whatever court you are, whether you are in trial court or in high court or in Supreme Court or a tribunal related practice or an arbitration, doesn't matter. Basic grooming is required. When you start out as a junior lawyer, you may think that you know, but you don't know. It's not just about reading the law. It's also about reading into people, gauging circumstances, gaining valuable experience from your office with whom you're attached, or your senior experience. So a lot many factors go into you becoming a good lawyer. So that time has to be invested. And first 3-4 years in your career, are not going to change your life forever. But if you get a good grounding, that they would put a very solid foundation for you in the long run.
True, sir. So, I mean, you have been fortunate enough to have learned the intricacies of law by working under some good senior lawyers. So, I
Yes.
mean, we all know that having a good senior is actually a true blessing. So, can you share some experiences which helped you to set up your own practice, the things that you learned under the guidance of your seniors, and then ultimately those things played out a very vital role in setting up your own independent practice? Can you just describe some of
I
those?
think in all the offices, I had a different learning experience, and you have to take the best of everything. So when I was with a law firm, when I was Pride and Co, I learned different type of work ethics with them, work-life balance, which I still imbibe in my practice. When I was with Mr. Amit Sibbal, I still try to imbibe his industry, his labor, his hard work, and his dedication. Because he's extremely hardworking. With Mr. Shivaji Jadhav, who is a very prominent AOR in Supreme Court, I learned the tact of dealing with different people, different clientele, and different briefing lawyers who would come all the way from Maharashtra to brief him in matters and to give him matters. With Mr. Rashid Hashmi, my trial court senior, I learned how to keep a cool head and how to actually dissect through things and how to read a charge sheet, read into a criminal matter. So all these things at different point in time in my career helped me, and even today, they are like my guiding paths.
Okay, sir. So, sir, lastly, moving on to the most important part, uh, client base. This is something that every first generation lawyer struggles with. I mean, why should a person trust you? This is the biggest question that we as first generation lawyers ask ourselves. That how will we go out in the industry and build our own practice when we do not have clients to, cater to? So how do we go about building our practice by, I mean, communicating with clients and building a good client base? So how do we do that as first generation lawyers without any legal backing?
I'll answer this in two legs. The first question that you asked me initially, for how long should you work with somebody, that becomes a part of this answer also.
Okay.
When you are a first generation lawyer, or even if you're a second generation lawyer, it doesn't matter. When you're a young lawyer, you have to have the training. If you don't have that training on how to deal with people, how to read into law, how to, behave before the court when you're arguing your matter, these things will pan out. And I'm strictly talking of litigation right now, but these principles apply to a corporate practice or to any other practice also. That if you do not have a firm grounding, if you do not have a good training from a legal chamber or from a law office, then you will falter. Why should a client trust you? A client will trust you by interacting with you. If in your interaction that client gauges that your knowledge of law is all right, that you're not going to play a fast one on that person, that you know how to handle a brief, you know how to argue before a court, you know how to get the filing in order, all these things go a very long way, in making you what you are. So I don't think there is a shortcut to success. A lot of hard work has to go in. It doesn't matter whether you're a first generation, a second generation, a third generation. Yes, if you're a first generation, path is definitely much more difficult because sometimes there are paucity of funds. Sometimes there are other opportunities which may not come your way. Sometimes there may be other blockages which you may not realize, immediately, but you may have to face them eventually. But should that dishearten you? I don't think that should, because the profession is very kind. It has immense number of practice areas. It has variety of clientele. It has variety of people, taking care of you in a very direct and indirect manner. So it has something to offer to everybody. Yes, for that you need patience and you need perseverance. There are no shortcuts. If you think you will become somebody like Mr. Jethmalani or like Mr. Rodgi or like Mr. Sibbal in 2 or 4 years of your practice, then I am sorry to say that you're mistaken. Please look at the tremendous amount of hard work and the tremendous amount of labor that they have put in 30, 40, 50 years of their practice. At least Mr. Jethmalani at least has 70 years of practice under his belt.
True.
So nothing comes easy. It requires a lot of hard work. It requires a lot of time, and with that time comes your experience and your goodwill. So to anybody who is listening to this interview, I would say please do not rush into things. take your time, be with some law office, get some grounding work done, and only then start once you think you're ready.
Great, sir. Great. Thank you so much for your time and this amazing session that we had. So, any parting message that you want to give to our viewers and our users? I mean, you have covered
So,
most of the areas with litigation and everything, your experiences, which are very enriching for us. So, any
right.
specific message that you want to pass on?
I think I just keep telling one or two things to people. One is to be successful, you have to start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. That's the fundamental ingredient. Nothing can change that. You have to make use of whatever you have today. And I think second thing that I keep telling people is get up, suit up, and show up. That's it.
Amazing, sir. That's amazing. So thank you so much for being with us today. And it was really a pleasure for all of us to hear your
Yeah. Thank
experiences
you.
and learn from them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.